Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about is an interview with FP Journe boutique in New York City. And there was another little side trip. We went to Jean-Rousseau also and ran into a fellow collector there, so that was sort of fun. So let's get started. So the first thing, we went down to New York. We came down from Connecticut. And when I say we, that was me and my friend Fernando. After Grand Central, we got on a train. We got on the number 6 train, went down to Canal Street, and then to the FP Journe boutique on Mercer Street. And Mercer Street is just this little street. They have some other really interesting things on it. When Fernando and I were walking down the street, we saw this woman in this big pink coat and a photographer, and she was a fashion model. And when we looked at me, really something. So that was one of our treats that we had. Now I had the appointment at 11:30. With William. There are the two of us. There's the tall, good-looking guy in the red shirt, and then the guy in the tie is William. So he's a great guy. I've known William, I think, about since 2016 when we met. And he has been with the New York FP Journe boutique longer than anybody, I think. And because different people I've met over the years when I've gone down to visit them, both on when they were up on Madison Avenue and also down on Mercer Street. So anyway, one of the things, we sat down to have a chat. Now this is one of their private rooms in the back. We were out in front, but I wanted to just, the whole place is really gorgeous. Now, one of the things they said didn't feel right about they didn't feel comfortable with videotaping. I should fine, take some pictures all I wanted to, but they didn't want that. So I sat down with William and we talked about one of the things I asked. I said, well, you guys thinking of putting silicone in your watches? A few years ago, FP Journe visited a place in San Francisco called the Firehouse, of all things, and they made silicone hairsprings. And he decided not to, and I asked him if he knew why, and he said something about it. Something was wrong about it. Now, FP Journe has this wonderful watch called Elegant, and it has a quartz. It's a quartz watch, and it's sort of a special quartz watch because it's got a little rotor in it, and when the rotor stops, the power goes down and the watch stops. And when you get up again, it's sort of in the background. It's kept the correct time, and so you put the watch on and the old hands go to the correct time. Sort of a cool watch. So he's got nothing against silicone because quartz is silicone and oxygen is all it is. But that's something with me, and that made me feel very good because I'm not a big fan of that either. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, so one of the things I asked, I said, well, what's the most popular one that you have, the most popular watch? Well, actually, the first thing I asked, I said, is there a watch, if somebody wanted to get an FP Journe watch, is there one that's really not that popular that maybe someone would have a chance of getting? He said no. Period. All of them, they're waiting for, I think, virtually every model that they make. And I asked them what the most popular one, and it is the FP Journe Chronomet Blue. And this is it's like mine, except it's made of tantalum, and it's got a blue dial to it, and it doesn't have a power reserve indicator. Those used to sell for 22,000, something in that neighborhood. They're now 39,800. I'll mention that, a little more about that in a bit. $40,000. They used to be almost half that much. Um, the newest watch, I asked about that. I said, "What do you have coming out?" And he said, "Well, what what they've been doing is that when they have a watch at the only watch auction, the watch at the only watch auction is sort of the harbinger, I guess, of their new watches. So they have, I think it was last year, they had the one with the hand and the hand told time like 1, 2, 3. It's amazing. I mean, really an amazing watch. Um, so one of the things I asked about that, we started talking about, what happened was sort of like before the pandemic, they were 20,000. After the pandemic, they were 40,000, and plus everything else has just gone to way up there. And yet there's waiting lists for them all because they are such good quality watches, and they'll never have silicons. Anyhow, um, what he said was really interesting. He said right before it, because I thought it had to do with the pandemic. People had, money because they weren't buying watches, they weren't doing anything, and they started thinking more about the high quality watches, and they somehow that's what happened. He says, no, it didn't work that way. He said before the beginning of the pandemic, they were seeing an upswing in it, and people at some point recognize that kind of quality in a watch and just really liked it. I asked William. William has been like a consistency in FP Journe watches. He knows all about them. Anything that I've ever wanted to know about an FP Journe watch, I'd ask William, and he always had the great information. He told me, he said, since he was a kid, he said he used to play with a Seiko chronograph in the back of his car. He's always loved watches. When his first watch that he had, when he got a little older, was a Citizen, and he would. He told me he used to go in New York. They had these things. I think they were in New York or they were online. One of the two. Got a feeling they were live, and they were watch time. Had these talks, and he'd go to the talks and learn about watches and so forth. And in 2010, he got a job at FP Journe, and he's been there ever since. It's interesting to find out about not only are the quality of the watches important, it's important to know that the quality of the people. It's not just there, like, next week you'll be, selling T-shirts at the Gap or anything like that. He's a watch guy who's ends up with, to me, what would be a dream job working at a place like FP Journe. So it was a very revealing thing. I think the best way to get an FP Journe watch is contact someone like William at a whatever FP Journe boutique is nearest to you. Tell them what you want, and you can get on a waiting list, and be nice. That's always important to that. Now, after we had our interview, William gave me a tour of the place. It's just amazing. Here you have this looks like a little hole in the wall. What a place! This was the pictures. The one pictured there is one of the back sort of private rooms. Now, the thing that really blew me away, we went upstairs. I didn't even know it had an upstairs. And here's the conference table. I suppose it could also be a dinner table to have it catered. And this area, there's a chandelier, and it hangs from the second floor, and there's a hole in the floor that you can see there, and it goes down to the first floor. I got a picture of that. I'll show you later. But the thing that blew my mind was this. There was an FP Journe watch themed pinball machine. And a picture of FP Journe with a loop on the backboard of it. And the whole game is around FP Journe watches. I used to really be into pinball. In fact, I published a couple articles on it. It's a very interesting game. And anyway, it was blew my mind to see up there. You know, you invite guests over. Hey, I got a pinball machine. We can play FP Journe pinball. To me, that was just fantastic. They had another game. They had a FP Journe backgammon game. They had this a collage of the movements up there. And then we went back downstairs, and they had this interesting, because I'd asked William about, there was the one of the watches was made from a Holland and Holland shotgun metal, and I guess they bought a couple of Holland and Holland shotguns and then metaled down the barrels to use the gunmetal in a watch. And there's a Holland and Holland chronomet souverain, or just a chronomet that's made of that. And there's a watch on steel. There's a book on steel watches, and William showed it to me, and he said a lot of the watches in this book are owned by FP Journe. I thought that was sort of an interesting thing that they had. Now, throughout the downstairs, there's a chandelier that's from the second floor. It sort of illuminates the first floor. There's a wall with 3 different clocks on it with the time in different parts of the world. These are, I think it's an octa model of that. I have the FP Journe Chronomet Souverain wall clock. They're a lot of fun to have. And then there's watch displays of the different watches that they have. And this was really, if you get a chance, you have to get an appointment. Just call and say, I'm going to be in New York and I'd like to have an appointment and look at your watches and, perhaps order one. The other thing, this is sort of a little aside, that was not planned or anything. Michael Kolb is a fellow collector, like we are, and we text him, and he said I'm going to be at Jean-Rousseau's looking at watch bands. I had an appointment at 1:00, and we were finished with the interview at FP Journe, so we went up there. And Jean-Rousseau is another place, and they have a relationship with FP Journe, because this was how I got one of my bands. I went to FP Journe, was right, I guess it must have been during the pandemic, and I talked about getting another band for this watch, and he showed the ones he had, and they just weren't what I wanted. And so he said, why don't you go over to Jean-Rousseau? And apparently I talked to the guy who worked at Jean-Rousseau, and he said that over the years they've made a lot of bands for FP Journe watches, and they have a picture of a drawing that somebody had done of an FP Journe watch. So there was sort of a real collection, and there's a picture of Michael's FP Journe resonance chronomet, and over there on the far right, he selected. I went up there about a month ago, and had got a watch band. I had bought a watch for a stepson, and I had the band was too small. And so I went to Jean-Rousseau, and they were incredible. They had these different materials, the different skins you could have. I wanted a gator skin, a black shiny gator skin, and so they had a rack of skins. They brought them out. They showed which ones, and Michael was getting his at the same time. And it just, you want something done to the way you like it. These guys are incredible for it. Anyway, that was just a little thing I thought I'd add for it. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, please ask, and if I don't have the answer, I'll get it for you. Uh, uh, and I'd really like your comments, your thoughts about watches like this, like FP Journe watches, and anything else you have on your mind. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection. And remember, this is an opportunity to subscribe if you like. Take care.